Thank you, Alan. I want to make sure I don't see those socks, so I'm going to go real fast. We know in the many years that we've been coaching legal marketers and attorneys and business development directors and law firms that there are key components necessary to sell your innovation, in order to sell your idea. So my goal here is to help each of you substantiate the value that you bring in your firm and really position yourself as someone who's really, really trusted and influential in your firms. And the first thing I want to talk about, there's a handout on your tables. It's called the Innovation Proposal Worksheet. This is a handout that's on our website. You can download this for free. We have a lot of tools on our website that are like this. But the purpose of this form is to give you structure. Because if you're going to sell an idea, these are the fundamental questions that you need to be able to answer. So the first part of my program is just going to be quickly going over these things. The first thing, which is the obvious one, is to write down what is it that you want to implement. What's the innovation? What's the idea? And I really invite each of you to use this form as an exercise right now, because everyone in this room probably has ideas they're thinking about implementing in their firms, and they need to give more thought to them before they actually introduce these ideas to anyone, and this form will be helpful for that. So what's the idea? Maybe you want to launch a blog for your firm, or maybe you want to start an initiative, a client feedback initiative, or maybe you want all of your practice groups to create client service teams. Or maybe it's time for your firm to create an app for your clients. So whatever the idea is, write it down. And then if you're going to pitch an innovation, it's going to be really important for you to identify, well, why is this idea good for the firm, and why is it good for the lawyers? So what are the benefits if we implement this idea? And more than that, how can you substantiate that these benefits are true? How are you going to prove that these benefits are real? So sometimes these things are obvious. Like, for example, let's say the firm is going to, you could say, if our firm's going to sponsor this golf tournament, we're going to be able to invite all of our clients, we're going to be able to invite a whole bunch of prospects, we're going to get great PR for it, and it's going to be a really great way of differentiating ourselves. And then sometimes the benefits are not going to be obvious. Sometimes it's going to require you to do a little bit of research. So, for example, let's say statistics show this is an emerging area of growth. This is a new market. We could be tackling this market. We have the resources internally to do it. I've done a printout of all of the companies we could be pitching to. Here's a list of all the in-house counsel at those companies. So you substantiate it, you prove it, and you back it up. That's what this part is about. So it's more than just explaining the benefits, it's really substantiating it to the point where the person you're pitching the idea to says to you, you know what, you're absolutely right, there's no doubt about it, these benefits are substantial. Now, other than talking about the benefits, another thing you want to be clear about is, well, what are the risks? So if we don't implement this idea, what's going to happen? What pain will we suffer if we don't do this? Well, maybe we're going to lose a market share. Or maybe our competitors are doing this, but we're not doing it. So you have to get really good at not only talking about the risk, but like you do with the benefits, you have to be able to prove that these risks are real. So an example of this would be if you went in there and said, our biggest competitor, they just created this new app for their clients. They launched the app. The app's been reviewed in 3 national publications. It already won an award. It's getting great publicity. Everyone's talking about it. We need to create an app. So sometimes, unfortunately, the best way to motivate people to support your idea is talk about the risk if you don't support the idea. So again, it's not letting the claims of benefits or the claims of risk stand on their own. You've got to be able to prove them. Next, what is your strategy for implementation? So how are we going to do it? And you have to, at this point, you have to be really good at painting a picture of how your idea is going to be installed. So maybe you're going to break it down into different cities, or maybe we're going to do a local rollout first. Whatever your strategy is. Let's say we're going to do client satisfaction surveys. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to pick, first we're going to pick the top 20 top-tier clients. Then the relationship partners for each one of those clients is going to reach out to each of those individuals, get their permission, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. So you lay out each step, no matter how small it is. And then, of course, the next thing is, why do you think this implementation, this strategy, is going to be effective? So this is the part where you would say, the reason why we're doing this strategy is because, and you get really good at laying out your case. Now, the thing is, most of you are going to be pitching these ideas to lawyers. Lawyers are genetically predisposed to be able to defend their case. So if you can defend your case, you're going to get a lot more respect from them, and you'll get a lot more traction. So this is where you make your case. Again, why is the strategy going to work? So research, statistics, stories, examples, metaphors, whatever you've got. Then what resources do we need? Do we need to hire a consultant? Do we need to purchase a special piece of equipment? Do we need to buy special software? Do we need a budget? What are we going to need in order for this idea to become a reality? Now, there is no question that the likelihood of you selling your idea and becoming a thought leader in your firm, it substantially increases if you have the ability to foresee obstacles. And not only foresee those obstacles, but figure out how to overcome them. So when you're thinking about your idea, you need to write down all of the obstacles, every little thing you could think of that's going to get in the way of you implementing this idea. So an example of this would be, well, I could tell you right now, Bill Smith, the head of the XYZ group, is going to be crazy against this idea because he has these issues and those are problems. And so one of the obstacles is going to be that we have these internal politics. So then, of course, it's, well, how are you going to overcome this obstacle? What's the solution? So next to each obstacle, you really need to identify, how are you going to solve this problem? And if you can anticipate obstacles and figure out the recommendations that you're going to make and how to solve these problems, this is really how you demonstrate your leadership characteristics. Next thing, we all know how important deadlines are. My advice here is just to make sure that you don't give any unrealistic deadlines or overstate what you can do. And if it's a larger idea, like a big project, it's always good to give yourself interim deadlines because that's a great way to monitor your progress on how the project's coming along. This next part, which is my favorite part of the whole process, because one of the great things about selling an idea is that it is a great opportunity for you to market yourself internally within your firm and establish alliances. And if you're going to sell an idea, you really need to learn how to recruit allies. So this is the part where you learn how to build a support structure, where you learn how to get people on your side. You build what we would call a power base. This is politics now. You build a power base to the point where you get people who will stand up and fight for you. Because if you want to sell something in a law firm, you're going to need to have more than one lawyer who wants to do it. So learning how to build a power base and get allies on your side is going to be really important, because when push comes to shove, you're going to have some jerk in some meeting say, we did that years ago and it didn't work. Or I was at another firm and we tried that and that never worked. And to be conciliatory to this jerk, everyone's going to back down. But if you can recruit allies, you can get yourself enough votes on your side, you can be able to say to yourself, okay, we know this Bill Smith guy, he's going to be a problem, he's going to be a naysayer, but I have enough votes on my side where even if it comes around and we can't turn this guy around, we still have enough votes. It won't matter. So learn how to recruit allies, and you do this one-on-one. You always negotiate your alliances in private. So this form, this is the innovation proposal worksheet. I think it'll be helpful for you in getting clarity about the idea that you want to sell and what are the specific steps necessary to implement this idea before you introduce it to anybody. Now, one of the skills when you're motivating, when you're selling an idea is, of course, you have to be able to motivate people. And so I want to talk about some key motivational strategies. The first one is one that I just mentioned, which is you always negotiate support one-on-one. So we're talking about a grassroots effort. It's always the most effective way to go. Build your allies one-on-one and always confirm support And the way that you do this is with an old-fashioned handshake. So I would use these words. I would say to someone, look, I just want to confirm I have your support, right? If we go into that meeting and people oppose us, you're going to back me, correct? And you have to learn how to get commitment from people. This is a very important skill, and it's very helpful to be able to say to somebody, do I have your vote? And then shake on it. One of the things that we do, we've been coaching lawyers for over 25 years, and this is one of the things we coach lawyers on when they do their marketing, and it's the same principle here when you're selling an idea internally. Anytime you talk about the cost or the price or how much it's going to cost, you always talk about it in terms of the benefits. In fact, we get asked by lawyers all the time, well, how do you convert? How do you close? Well, the way that you close is you talk about the benefits. The more you talk about the benefits, the more that the person you're talking to sees that the benefits so outweigh what it's going to cost, you'll be able to sell them on the idea. This is why it's so important to identify what are all the benefits that you will achieve. The final motivational strategy, what I think is really important, and we drill this in the head of lawyers when we coach them. Anytime you have a meeting, a conversation, a conference, before you leave that interaction, always negotiate what's going to happen next. So always get really good at saying, that sounds great, what's the next step? Should we schedule a follow-up call? Can I talk to you next week? Should I give you a call on Friday? Offer up some options. This is why a lot of lawyers fall down on their business development, is because they're not good at following up, and then they get scared about following up, or they feel uncomfortable because they haven't negotiated the next step. It's the same principle here when you're selling an idea internally, because you're going to get a lot of people who say, you know what, let me think about this, and get really good at saying, sounds great, when should I circle back with you? The last thing I want to talk about is overcoming objections. So here are some basic tips, because when you try to sell an idea, eventually you're going to have people who don't always agree with you. The main thing, of course, when you're trying to sell an idea and when somebody gives you an objection is, number one, you got to be clear about what the objective is. But the second thing is to acknowledge the objection and not position yourself as someone who's now going to fight them, but to acknowledge that you agree with them and that you understand where they're coming from, that you hear them, and actually give back to that person what your understanding of their concern is. So you need to get really good at saying these words. I understand what you're saying. I completely understand where you're coming from. Your concern is this. Tell me if I'm right. What your concern is if that we do this, we're going to lose market share. Or what your concern is that if we do this, we're going to cannibalize our existing clients. So you repeat back what their concern is, and you'll find that this is a very effective strategy, because what you don't want is you don't want the person to come back and say, yeah, but you don't understand. And that's what's going to happen. So always repeat back what your understanding is, and get really good at acknowledging that you hear them and that they have been heard. Most people who complain, by the way, they feel like they haven't been heard. So this is a very important tip that I could be giving you. So it's, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, this is where you're coming from, and then saying, instead of saying, but this is what I feel, don't even use the word but. Say, may I give you an alternative way of looking at this? And you try to focus on getting permission to offer an alternative perspective, because it may be something that they're not considering. And that's different than saying, yeah, this is what you believe, but this is what I believe, and then what happens is you position yourself as an enemy, and you're going to get pushback from that. So the optimum strategy is to ask for permission, and then the final thing is if you get someone who says, well, no, I don't want to hear an alternative opinion or perspective, then you only have a couple strategies. One is to say, you know, I got to tell you it's really hard to have this conversation because you're not open to other options. Now, if you get someone who's really recalcitrant, you may be able, it depends what kind of rapport you have with these people. You may be able to say, look, I'm confused. Can you help me understand here? It appears that your belief is that this is the only way to do it. Is it possible that there might be other ways? And maybe you'll get the person to say, well, yeah, of course there are other ways. And then you might be able to tell them. And look, if somebody says, no, I'm not open to hearing any other ways, then your only other option is to say, okay, then let's talk about how we're going to follow up now based upon the current situation. And you negotiate the next step with the understanding that at a later date, you can say to this person, look, I know we've talked about this in the past, but I've uncovered some new information. There's new information that warrants me, that justifies me bringing this up again. So if you have new information, if you can come up with new information, then that justifies you bringing the topic up again. But my main point is this: if somebody says no, that doesn't mean you necessarily give up, unless, of course, you feel it's not worth the battle. So this is the main point that I want to say about overcoming objections, is agree and clarify and get really good at asking for permission to offer an alternative perspective. All right? That's all I have to offer. Thank you.